Last week we had a look at Bill C-8 that's currently before the Canadian Parliament. This week we'll have a look at another bill that's been introduced by the Liberal government under Mark Carney. Not exactly sure how this is elbows up or owning Trump, but this is what people voted for, C-9, which gives us some added hate crime laws and some definitions. So we'll have a look at that today. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. Before we get into Bill C-9, I'm always trying to remember to ask people to like this video, subscribe, share it if you enjoy my content, if you find it useful, and comment. All these things help us with the algorithm and help us get the word out, because there's a lot of things happening in Canada that people need to be aware of. And this week we'll be talking about a further encroachment on free speech, or a further reduction of what you're allowed to talk about or what symbols you're allowed to display in Canada in 2025 and going forward. But before we get into that, just a quick word from RAM Design Group, who supports us with a lot of free work, helping us with editing and spreading the word, and they might be able to help you.
Are you looking to increase your target market audience? Reach and/or engage with current or potential clients on social media? Or are you simply looking to rebrand or revamp a current or up-and-coming company or business? Well, look no further than RAM Design Group, Inc., your public relations insurance plan for your next company event, new product launch, or marketing campaign overhaul. RAM Design Group, Inc. specializes in marketing, event planning, product launches, communications, social media management, crisis management, copywriting, and much, much more. Please visit ramdesigngroupinc.ca for more information, or email us at rmitchell@ramdesigngroupinc.ca and book your company's future success today.
So that said, I'd considered doing a video on the sentencing of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. I alluded to that last week. I've had a review of the decision, but I think everyone's already said what needed to be said about that. The sentence in and of itself, if you accept that their conviction for a peaceful protest is appropriate, then it's an appropriate sentence. The judge went over the fact that it was peaceful, that they were cooperative with police, that they tried to limit the scope of the protest in response to police requests. And these were all things that added to the judge's decision to give house arrest rather than throwing them in the penitentiary for the better part of a decade, as the prosecutor was asking. The judge, in fact, said that what the prosecutor was asking for was completely unreasonable on the facts before them. I think the main point that people have made is, okay, I mean, that sentence is better than going to jail for many, many years, but should they have even been convicted in the first place? I can't think of any other peaceful protests like that where people have been even charged. I mean, take, for example, the numerous pro-Palestine protests that have occurred. In fact, recently, the prosecutors dropped a number of noise bylaw charges in Ottawa for pro-Palestine protesters. So begs the question, why do you get a free ride if you're protesting in favor of Palestine, but if you're protesting in favor of ending lockdowns and people being allowed out of their homes and people not being forced to take an unproven and untested vaccine, that now there's information coming out that we were called conspiracy theorists for suggesting might be possible, seems to be coming out down in the United States. You know, is that right to have that two-tiered system? Is that the appropriate two tiers to have? I think I know what the thoughts of my viewers are, but we're always happy to hear from you in the comments box. But that said, let's have a look at C-9. We've got a whole playlist on hate crime laws and the way the hate crime laws are applied in Canada. I encourage you to have a look at that playlist for more information about how the law is currently enforced in Canada. But now we have C-9 that is potentially going to add a few things. It's still before Parliament. I don't see why it won't make its way all the way through Parliament. But let's have a look at the what's being added to the criminal code here. It's actually a fairly short bill. We'll have the link in the show description as always. But C-9 is adding some specific things to the Criminal Code of Canada. So here they're adding a subsection to Section 319, saying that now willful promotion of hatred, terrorism, and hate symbols is the subheading. Everyone commits an offense who willfully promotes hatred against any identifiable group by displaying in any public place a symbol that is principally used by or principally associated with a listed entity. And then they specifically note the Nazi Hakenkreuz, also known as the Nazi swastika, or the double sig rune, also known as the SS bolts. Interestingly, they didn't add the Wolfsangel, which is used by the Azov battalion in Ukraine, although Azov battalion also uses the Hakenkreuz and the double sig rune. But, I mean, that's Ukraine, that's not Canada. We just give them billions of dollars and support them. But it's interesting that the people we're supporting couldn't even do in Canada what they're doing in the Ukraine. But in any event, so now it's being added. Before you had to at least say something. Now, if you're simply displaying the symbol, you could be charged. Although that said, we've seen an individual recently charged for willful promotion of hatred by cutting a Hakenkreuz into their front lawn. So it's not like this isn't already available to law enforcement, but the Liberal Party of Canada, they're adding this. What else are they adding? They mentioned that if a person is convicted of an offense under Section 318, that being the willful promotion of hatred, that they're adding that subsection to, but we've looked at in previous episodes what's already in 318. Anything by means of in relation to which the offense was committed on such conviction may, in addition to other punishment, be forfeited to His Majesty. So if you were writing these things on an expensive computer, they can seize your computer. Maybe if you're cutting a Hakenkreuz into your front lawn, like we've seen in Ontario recently, they'll seize your entire property if you're convicted. So that's a very important one to keep in mind, because this is really upping the ante for the punishments that they'll give to people for saying things that the government doesn't want you to say, or displaying symbols that are not allowed to be shown. And I find it interesting that the Hakenkreuz is singled out, but why isn't the hammer and sickle listed? Or why aren't other symbols that we could think of listed? It's specifically that one ideology that the government has a real problem with. Although, thank goodness, they haven't added a cross yet, or say the Jerusalem cross specifically, for example, because there was much ado about that in the US when the American current Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth, was being confirmed. Apparently he has a Jerusalem cross tattoo, and they're saying that was a hate symbol. Maybe that's yet to come for a future amendment. Now, interestingly, though, they do say that for greater certainty, the communication of a statement does not incite or promote hatred for the purposes of the section solely because it discredits, humiliates, hurts, or offends. Now, I find that interesting because it seems to me that that's exactly what these sections have been used for, is when some material humiliates, hurts, or offends individuals. Then they do now add a definition to the Criminal Code of Hatred, meaning the emotion that involves detestation or vilification and that is stronger than disdain or dislike. Now, this is actually codifying what the courts have already, through common law, interpreted the pre-existing hate crime laws to mean. So this isn't as much of an addition. This is really codifying something that's already been in place. Again, have a look at the playlist. You look at the first episode I did on hate crime laws, I covered that. And it's interesting, though, that none of the main cases I've seen lately has anyone attempted to use that law. Usually it's a "it wasn't me" defense, or that's just a guilty plea, such as the individual in North Bay, Ontario, I believe it was, who recently received 9 months for denying the Holocaust. First time someone's been charged under the Holocaust section. But he clearly pled guilty because he was arrested on June 20th, sentenced already by mid-September. I can tell you as a lawyer, the only way that could happen is if you pled guilty. I have yet to see someone try to argue that what I've said, it is not meeting this test of being detestation and vilification. In any event, now then they also add 320.1001, where you get a new offense tacked on if there's hatred of, based on race, national and ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. Currently, under the criminal code, that's an aggravating factor on sentence if your crime has one of these motivations. Now you get an extra charge laid on you. It'll be interesting to see if that passes the principle that you can only be convicted of one offense for one set of illegal behavior, but they're adding that. Those are the key things that are being added. And I think it's interesting to see what the Minister of Justice, Sean Fraser, had to say when he was asked about this by Andrew Lawton, a Conservative member of Parliament, of why are we adding these laws when we already have laws that can cover these things that you're concerned about. So let's just have a quick look at that.
Very quickly, when you have the willful promotion of hate, the person who's convicted of that could still be convicted, but also of a second charge, the willful promotion of hate using hate symbols, which would attract a greater degree of culpability and potentially a greater penalty, recognizing that the use of hate symbols, when you're willfully promoting hate, can cause greater damage to both the individual and the entirety of the community. So I don't find these points to be inconsistent with one another, but instead that behavior could potentially face an additional charge with a more serious penalty because of the manner in which a person chose to promote hate to cause more damage to an affected.
So there we have it. The Minister of Justice is saying exactly what I just suggested. They're looking to add more penalty. It's not enough to get 10 years for making memes like that Dark Foreigner individual. We'll eventually get to looking at that case in more detail. I've mentioned it a number of times. That's not enough. What the Liberal Party of Canada wants that's exactly it. The Liberal Party of Canada, they want more. They want more control over what you can think and what you can say. And their hate crime, it seems to me that the Liberal Party of Canada feels that law enforcement hasn't been laying enough of these charges, notwithstanding the near explosion of them that we've seen. They're adding more charges is a clear signal to law enforcement. You start laying more charges for what we deem to be hatred. And that's where I think the slippery slope of hate crime laws lies, is it's what the party in power deems to be hate crime. And I think that goes back to my question, why is the hammer and sickle not a hate symbol, but the Hakenkreuz is? It's because of the views of the people in power, and they're dictating what you can think and what you can't say. So that's where that slippery slope may come in. It's certainly contrary to the allegation that free speech is a right in this country, in my view. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's wrong. I've talked before about why I think rights should not be absolute, but it's clear that the Liberal Party of Canada feels that speech has been a little bit too free, and we need to lock that down by introducing more and more laws to restrict what can be said or what can be displayed. I think we will see, they specifically list the Hakenkreuz. Probably won't be long until Confederate battle flag is outlawed. I wouldn't be surprised if the red ensign is outlawed at some point, which I strongly disagree has anything to do with hatred. Has to do with would be love of our heritage by displaying that. But when you see groups that use that already being accused of being racist and hateful individuals, it seems like it's a possibility. So that said, that's a quick look at Bill C-9. This video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, contact a lawyer. If you want me to be that lawyer, my contact information is listed below, especially if you've run afoul of these laws and said something that you're not allowed to say. I recommend you to give me a call, because I personally think there's defenses that have been untried that could be used, and perhaps we'll talk about that in another episode. We're always open to recommendations, requests for show topics, things that you, our viewers, think are important and you'd like to hear about. Let us know so we can give you content that's taking into account what you want to hear about. And as always, if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media.